Hello, hi everyone. Welcome to this new uh, session of our webinars. Let's wait another couple minutes. In the meantime, thank you for being here. Today we'll be also recording this session and we'll be sending it to you later so you can access also uh, online through our social media channels. So first of all, the topic of today. So the topic of today is about what is changing in regulation. And today we'll be focusing on the SPR regulation and the related digital passport. So as the agenda, we'll have a small introduction, a quick introduction, and then we'll go through the regulatory updates and the key points of digital passport project. We will also have a few minutes for a Q&A at the end of the session if we have time. And then I will have the pleasure to share with you some latest content that we prepared in the last month. So first of all, for those who doesn't know me yet, I'm Sara. I'm the Sustainability Manager at Renoon. And today I will be giving you an overview about digital passports. So just to give you also some context, the work that we have done in this last year actually have been really long because we spent more than 150 hours in the different working groups that we have both at the European level, but also from some private organization in order to be aligned to the pieces of regulation that are coming out, but also to the new industry standards that are developing about digital passports. As you probably know, there are many regulations at the European level related to sustainability that require transparency. And today we'll be focusing on just one that, as we'll see later, is also in a certain way connected to all the others. So I think it's always important to remember the timeline and remember what we already have and what will be the next steps in the close future. So first of all, the eco-design regulation for sustainable products has come into force in July 2024. So it's already been more than a year. And now, this last April, the European Commission has published the first working plan that, as we'll see later, has set the first requirements and the first priorities in terms of product categories. The next step that is finally very close by the end of this year will be reading the first draft of the delegated act that will first of all present all the requirements for the different product categories for textile. And so from there we will have a more concrete overview of which will be the mandatory requirements for our digital passport that then will be adopted from 2027, from February 2027, actually. Of course, as any regulation at the European level, then there will be an 18-month buffer for implementation, from which all the product in the market should have a digital passport in order to be sold within the European Union, both even if they are not manufactured in the European Union. So in this slide, actually, we do also present at the bottom the ideal timeline for a pilot on digital passport and the actual implementation, especially for bigger companies. Because as you know, like the collection starts being developed at least 1 year before the actual day in which they are put on the market. But what is the definition that we can give to digital passport? So digital passports are and will be officially from 2027 the digital identity card for products, components, and materials, which will store relevant information to support transparency and promote circularity, but also as a tool that can support also the compliance with other regulation. And at the same time, can be also something that can help engaging with the end consumers. So product information. Product information is one, of course, of the key information that will be included in the digital passport. Then, as we know from the few pieces of regulation that are already out, also something related to product impact will be included. For example, as far as we know, also from the draft from the delegated acts that have been released for the batteries, they will probably include for sure the climate change impact indicator. While for sure also some other information regarding the product origin will be included, and also information related to circularity. So both care instruction, end of life, repair options, and then of course on top of that, different like engagement programs can be also connected to digital passports. When you start as a company a digital passport project, you have to involve different teams, and you have to take into consideration different data points. So the first choice that is needed to be made is the one regarding the data carrier. So the data carrier that will allow access to the digital passport, which for example could be a QR code or either an NFC tag. Then on the other side, you have to make a choice about the data that you wanna communicate and share to the digital passport. First of all, on one side, of course, we have the mandatory information, but on top of that, it can be added also voluntary information, which can also give back a value to the company. Like, for example, the concept of authenticity is not per se as something that is required by the regulation, but of course that can give back a value to the brands that will use also digital passport as a new engagement channel. Then for what's regarding data publication, so we know already that digital passport, first of all, should be present on the physical products for the entire life cycle of the product. And then on the other side, of course, there should be also accessible through the e-commerce of the website. So the e-commerce or the website of the brand. And then, as I was mentioning also before, it can be also a new channel for upselling or for promoting repair practices and also activities, and also for connecting to different engagement touch points. And then, of course, the last but not least thing that should be taken into consideration is the funnel strategy, both in terms of like the activation and the campaigns when the digital passport will be launched. The regulatory updates, the most recent one that we have, as I mentioned also before, it's the working plan that has been released this April. From this working plan, what has been defined are the first product categories that have been prioritized according to studies that have been made on the impact of these categories on the market. So priority one is for textiles and clothing, and the adoption timeline, so the day in which the delegated acts will be adopted, is for textile in 2027, actually February 2027. And then as priority 2, 3, and 4, for finished products, we'll have furniture, tires, and mattress. While at the same time, two different intermediate products have also been defined as the priority categories for this first working plan. So for this first period that goes between 2025 and 2030. Actually, in this working plan, through this working plan, I've also been excluded some categories, which are detergents, paints, and lubricants, footwear, and chemicals. Because the European Commission is taking some time to make an additional evaluation on the impact of these three specific product categories. So actually, it is also important to highlight that in the working plan, it is explained that at any stage, the European Commission may introduce requirements for the product categories that are not currently included, so even before 2030. Actually, for example, it may be interesting that for footwear, a study on the impact will be done within 2027. The main question that I always receive from companies, from brands, is actually what will be the DPP including? So on one side, on the left side of this slide, I put all those that can be the information, the information requirements. And these are the sustainable design requirements from the SPR. So among these, the information to put in the digital passport can be chosen. We already have some key information that we will for sure needed to include in the digital passport, which are the identifier connected to the product in itself, but also the operator and the manufacturer, importer, and also the factory. Then the digital passport will also contain the different declaration of conformity, like the CE marking for selling products within the European Union, for example. And then, of course, it will also include all the information related to the manual, of course, if that's applied to the product category, the maintenance, the safety and care information. Then it's important to take into consideration when, as a brand, as a company, you start a digital passport project, that this tool can be also a way for sharing additional information like the product in history, other circularity or other kind of programs that the brand may have in place, or additional information that maybe are not like specifically required, but that could be interesting and that can add value or either can back up sustainability claims, for example, like the different certification at the product or process or company level. And then also engagement programs related to authentication, loyalty, etc. The infrastructure, so this is a bit more technical, but the infrastructure for digital passport is made of 4 key points, I'll say. So first of all, the ideal data carrier that of course can also change according to the product category. And this data carrier should be connected with the unique identifier of the product. Then, second point is to set up the information system storage. So, for example, also if you need to collect information from your PLM, so where are you storing the information that you should put in the digital passport at the moment? And then this information should be collected and then stored on what will be called the European DPP registry, with a certain level of security that will be required, and of course, like certain level of privacy and availability of this data, because different actors on the market will have different keys to access different information through digital passports. Then this data should be finally presented to consumers through the microsites that stays behind the data carrier, or either like a widget or an iframe or a link that is placed on the e-commerce on like online stores. And we'll have, as mentioned before, the first info requirements in the delegated acts that will be released by the end of this year. The status at the moment of the regulation, the key things that we'll have hopefully from the first version already of the delegated act are defined into these key points. So we'll have defined by product category the information that will be needed to place onto the products, and that's one thing. Then the second point is about the data carrier. So according to the product category, as you can imagine, the data carrier can be put on the product itself, on the packaging, or also on the documentation that is accompanying the product. And it will be specified also if like just one data carrier, so either on the product or on the packaging, is enough, or there should be more than one data carriers. Then I'm talking also on our side, so on the side of who will be called digital passport service provider, like Renoon. They will be also releasing the rules, the requirements, and certification process for DPP service providers. And then, like on the IT side, on the technical side, we'll also know more about the procedures for verifying digital credentials of economic operators. So the possibility to access to different information. For example, the authority may access to a different kind of information compared to, for example, a final consumer. And then the rules for managing the unique identifiers behind products. So which standards can be used, which internationally recognized standards. And something that the regulation is saying is that, of course, there will be a preference for already recognized international standards for unique identifiers creation. Then last two key points will be the creation of, on one side, the DPP registry, on which this information will be stored, and also the DPP web portal, on which this information will be accessible for consumers. So these are the key points for which we are still waiting for the last piece of information. And something that I find really, really interesting is that digital passport are a tool that is also mentioned in other regulation, in other framework at the European level as a tool for digitalization. For example, for sure here we have the SPR, but digital passport can be a container of other information that the companies may need to communicate to either final consumer or authorities. For example, for what regards the chemical legislation, or also the packaging waste regulation, but also the Green Claims Directive, for example, as a backup of the sustainability claims that you make, and at the end also for the customs, for example, for simplifying the custom checks. And it's basically a digital label. So what we are doing until now with paper can be then done digitally in a more easy way. And I think these were the key points that are always interesting to keep in mind when dealing with a digital passport project. And I'm also curious to know if do you have any specific question I may help you out with, or if you, for example, already started working on this kind of projects, if you do have also feedbacks and more like also experience of how this project can be managed. Okay, I do see one question, which are the mandatory information? Okay, so let me go back 1 second to this slide. So, mandatory information. This mandatory information that I put here top right of the slides are for sure some basic information that from the ESPR regulation, it's already clear that this needs to be included in the passports. For example, there should be for sure the identifiers, the product identifier, but also the manufacturer, importer, and factory identifier. For example, standards like the one of GS1, for example, can be used. So the GTIN, but also digital passport will be a container of declaration of conformity and also user manuals, maintenance, or safety information. So, of course, for textiles and for apparel, fashion, this can be related to how to repair the garment, for example, but also how to take care of the garment. So, what is now, for example, the care label, but in a digital way. So these are the key information that we already know they will be mandatory. And then on top of this, of course, the digital passport will be including also information about the impact. So we don't know exactly which impact indicators should be included. We can expect to have for sure the climate change because it is already been included in other regulation. For example, the one related to construction or also to batteries. But this is more just my assumption at the moment. Of course, I cannot speak in advance of the regulation. And also some information about the product origin. We don't know yet specifically which steps of the production should be mandatory included, but hopefully we'll see it within this year. Yeah, I do see a raised hand from Gaspar. I'll allow you to speak. Okay, you should be able to speak now if you want. Otherwise, you can also type your question in the chat. Gaspar, I think you are unmuted.
Hello.
Hello.
I think
Okay.
it's a question. Sorry. Very
Okay, no
creative.
problem. No problem then. Perfect. I hope I've been enough clear. If there are no more questions. So something that I wanted to share with you also before closing this webinar are a couple of new content, new reports and new one-pagers that we have just released. And that might be interesting for those approaching to this kind of project and also to those approaching to the topic in order to understand, like, for example, which teams will be included, which will be the efforts and the kind of information that are needed to collect, and also the value that can get from it. So here, for example, you can scan it and you will have access to the new one-pager that we released about the status of the regulation. And oh, okay, I see another small question, so I'll finish this and then go back to the question of Alessandra. And so you can download it from here. Then we do also have the report that we have released beginning of this year. So this is more a generic overview of the different trends of compliance and the different requirements and the different needs that are emerging from the European market. So we had a roadshow in different cities last year where we collected the feedback from the industry and also some opportunities that are emerging. So this is something really interesting to have a look at because it gives you an overview from different perspectives. So then before closing, let me go back 1 second to the question, Alessandro, that I see in the chat. So about small companies, small than 10 employees, what is the deadline to adoption of DPP? We don't have, until now at least, a differentiation according to the size of the company. What maybe we can make a comparison with what is happening with batteries, which is like another product category, which is not part of the SPR, but which is actually the first product categories that will be requiring digital passport in the market. For example, in batteries, there have been no requirements in terms of size of the company, but there have been requirements in terms of the capacity of the battery. So we may take into consideration that there might be some difference in terms of, for example, fashion product, textile product categories, but I don't think in terms of size of the company, at least as far as we know. Yeah. So, yeah, this is also, you're welcome, Alessandra. And yeah, we are always in touch with experts on the topic, but also with different working groups. So we will keep you also updating you with a new session of the webinars when we will have additional pieces of information, and we'll be sharing those with you as well. And if you are interested, you can also have a look at more information and more materials that we do share on our website. So if you have a look at our website, you can go on use cases, on knowledge center, in order to find out additional materials, like, for example, this one, the checklist. It's really interesting because it gives you a step-by-step roadmap of what teams to involve and what will be the different activities and the different pieces of decision that should be taken by each team. So that's something really interesting that I would suggest you to download. And then you can find out more reports and more materials on the website. And then for those interested, we have also the possibility to book a 15 minutes chat with me and with the team in order to have a session about your compliance requirements, a kind of more personalized checklist and a roadmap of what will be needed in your company in order to work on a DPP project. So you can scan this QR code and book a session with us. Of course, we will be sharing all these materials with you. We'll be sharing the recording of this session and also the slides. You can always reach out to either me on LinkedIn or to any member of the Renoon team. So thank you everyone for being here until now. It has been a pleasure, and I wish you a nice evening. See you next time.